Hi guys, welcome back to Sacred Vedic Astrology. My name is Samantha and I truly feel so blessed to be a professional Vedic sidereal astrologer. So today we're going to unravel the whole Sade Sati experience, okay? Is it really 7.5 years of bad luck? Is it really a curse like they say it is? Obviously not. We're going to unravel and demystify the truth of the Sade Sati experience. I like to call it the Sade Sati experience because it is an experience. Best believe it. And it is 3 different phases. So I'm also going to unravel the different phases of Sade Sati, the initial phase, the middle phase, and the final phase as we go through this video, okay? I think this is probably going to be one of the most important videos I have made thus far because if someone is about to go into Sade Sati, if they are in it, they need to know about it. It's really, really important. And it's also important because there is so much craziness out there online about Sade Sati, and it can be really scary if you're about to go into that, and we have to really try to not make it out to be something scary when really it's just a deeply transformational time period. Is it easy? No, not by any means, but it is a really intense and transformational period that's going to bring you to a whole different place by the end of it. Okay, so I just got out of Sade Sati. I'm a Capricorn moon in Vedic astrology, so we are out of it, baby, and it's actually crazy how different I feel. I really couldn't even put it into words if I tried, but as we go through this video, I'm definitely going to sprinkle in a lot of my personal experience with this 7.5-year transit, right? So I think it's really useful to also have just come out of Sade Sati myself so I can speak from a very personal perspective. All right, so let's start with what is Sade Sati. So Sade Sati translates to 7.5 years, right? So 7.5 years of bad luck, as they would say in India, right? So it's a 7.5-year time period when Saturn transits over the natal moon. It goes first to the sign before your moon placement, then it is directly on the moon, then it is the sign after your moon, right? So there's this 3-phase time period. And this spans to 7.5 years when we add all the phases up. So 3 phases, about 2.5 years for each phase. And because Saturn moves so slowly, it becomes a really long initiation process. I like to call Sade Sati like a purification time period because it's really purifying everything that does not serve someone, right? And it's really this deeply emotional, psychological purification experience more than anything else, right? It's different than the Saturn return because to me, the Saturn return is more on like the physical plane of existence. Saturn return is more of a check-in of like, okay, are you doing, the career you want? Are you showing up in the world in the way you want to show up? More like that. Sade Sati is more psychological because it's Saturn on the moon, right? The moon is a very sensitive planet. Moon is manas, it's the mind, it's the psychology, it's the emotional nature, it's the upbringing, it's the nurturing, it's the mother. The moon is very deep-rooted stuff, right? So Sade Sati is a very psychological, emotional, deeply transformational sort of time period because it's not just the Saturn returning to its placement. It's like Saturn is right on the moon, it's right on the emotions, it's right on the mental energy. So it's really intense in that way. Okay, so I want to cover 5 themes that I've really seen in Sade Sati from my own experience, clients' experience, from practicing as a Vedic astrologer, right? So not something I read in an ancient text, not something I read in a book, something that I have seen from experience of Sade Sati. So the first thing is relationships across the board get really tested, really, really tested. Things that aren't built on like a solid foundation can really fall apart and unravel during Sade Sati. I've seen many clients get divorced during Sade Sati. I've seen many clients end major relationships during Sade Sati. I have seen a lot of karmic experiences and relationships during Sade Sati. Relationships will get tested because Saturn is now in the mix, right? So I have seen a lot of times the relationship might be fine before, but when Sade Sati comes about, all the stuff that might have been ignored comes up, right? There's going to be a lot of Saturn. Someone can feel like the relationship is getting boring, it's getting heavy, it's getting Saturnian in some way. Okay, so relationships get tested all across the board, family relationships, friendships, marriages, etc. All right, there's a lot of tests that will come up there. The next thing I see is job and financial issues are very common during Sade Sati. So someone might lose their job, they might struggle financially, they might struggle with business, they might have a whole big career change. The reason is because Saturn is trying to get someone on the right track, right? So if they're doing something that's really misaligned in work, those issues can really come about. There's like a lot of karmic issues with money and work and finances that I see during Sade Sati. Okay. The next thing I see is depression, a lot of depression and heavy emotions and negative thinking, right? Because Saturn is now on the mental energy. So people feel very hopeless a lot during Sade Sati. Whenever I have clients going through Sade Sati, I always explain this to them because a lot of times they will come to me with a very hopeless sort of perspective, right? It's a heavy time period, so they'll say things like, I don't know, it's never going to get better. I don't think it's ever going to get better. And I explain to them, I'm like, you're in Saturn on your moon. Saturn is the heaviest planet on the mind, on the emotions, right? I've had clients literally come to me during Sade Sati and be like, I just don't think anything's ever gonna get good again. And I'm like, no, it's a transit, no. So it's really important to explain this to people because they feel very stuck. They feel like it's never going to get better. It's going to get so much better, right? I look back to when I was experiencing Saturn on my moon versus now, oh my goodness, good Lord, I'm like the happiest I could ever be now. But I remember when Saturn was directly on my moon, it was intense, best believe it. So a lot of people will have very negative thoughts, heavy thoughts, depression, like that. It's not a happy-go-lucky time period by any means. Even if you're a naturally very happy person, which I am very happy by nature, I've always been that way since I was younger. I'm very I love to just have a good energy about me and be happy out in the world. And even though that's in my nature, when I was going through Sade Sati, I was like, whew. It was like this, good Lord. Yeah, it's a really heavy emotional time period, best believe it. Okay, so another common thing I see is many people start businesses or go back to school during Sade Sati because they're trying to get more serious around a new career path. I changed my whole career path during Sade Sati. We'll talk about this as we go through the video. But what I was doing before Sade Sati and what I do now is drastically different. It's kind of the same, we'll get into it, but it's very, very different. Changed my whole path essentially. Okay, so the other thing I see is people have some sort of insanely major transformation. It could be a physical transformation, emotional transformation. There is some big life change from start of Sade Sati, end of Sade Sati. People can move, change jobs, get divorces. Something really major is going to change in their life. You know, I've never really seen that fail. There's going to be something pretty dramatic that does change in their life path or their life trajectory. Okay. And what I will say on that note is usually whatever is the big change is for the best in the long run, even though it doesn't feel so good at the time, right? So if someone gets a divorce during Sade Sati, they look back and they realize like, oh my goodness, that was not the right marriage, right? If someone quits a job during Sade Sati, they look back and they're like, that was not the right job, like that. Okay, so those are the 5 major themes I have seen during the Sade Sati time period. All right, now let us go into the phases, the 3 phases of Sade Sati. This is really, really important because each phase is vastly different. Okay, the first phase is Saturn is 12th from your moon. Okay, to me, this is the most difficult. I really, really believe it to be the most difficult part of Sade Sati. For me, it was the most difficult. For many of my clients, it was the most difficult. That's just how I have seen it to work. You know, people are going to have different experiences, but my goodness, you know, if we think about the 12th house, really heavy house, moksha house, but dastana house, right? There's a lot of heaviness with the 12th house. And so when Saturn goes there from the natal moon, It's a lot. It's really, really a lot. So the initial phase is Saturn is now 12th from your moon, and this is where a lot of loss, a lot of endings, a lot of isolation, a lot of detachment occurs. There can be a lot of financial issues as well too, because the 12th house is the house of like expenses, right? Outside expenses. So it can be that this period someone has to spend a lot more than they want on something. There can be issues with expenses to some degree. So 12th house is really the house of letting go. It's like completing a cycle, of some sorts. And it's also a time period in which the 12th house is very, very spiritual. It's very inward. It's very reflective. It's very introspective. So I'm going to speak on my experience in the first phase, and this is going to be different for everyone because everyone has a different chart, right? Like for me, my moon is in the 8th house, so my Sade Sati was very 8th house focused, right? Which is, we won't even get into how specific it was. It was all about the 8th house, best believe it. But it's different for everyone's chart, but I'm just going to speak on my experience in like the first phase when Saturn is 12th from the moon. So 12th house. Okay, I remember I got very serious about meditation. Okay, so the reason for that is because 12th house rules meditation. Yes, it does. And I essentially stumbled into this transcendental meditation center in Brooklyn at the time. I was going to art school. I was in a deeply introspective time. And there was just so much going on, like internally, right? And there was so much change. I had just moved to a new city. I had cut off a lot of old friends. I wasn't like drinking. I wasn't partying, even though most people my age were. It was a very strange sort of time period, right? And I was so introspective. Like, I remember at that time, I was always around people all the time because I was in art school. And I was always meeting people, and I was always in these groups, and I was doing projects, and I was always doing these like film projects and photography. And oh my God, it was like so many groups all the time. And I remember Saturn 12th from the moon, I was like, I just want to be alone. I was like, get me out of here. I was very sensitive in that way at that time period. I really just wanted to be alone, introspect, like that. So I do remember that 12th house energy very, very viscerally, actually. Like I remember feeling like I didn't want to be in the mix. It was very draining to be around a lot of people at that time, but it just so happened that I had to be around a lot of people at that time, like that. 12th house is meditation. I got serious about my meditation practice, which actually saved my whole, oh my goodness. Like during Sade Sati, I truly believe if I didn't find that meditation center that I happened to stumble into, I don't even know. I do not know what would have happened. Thank God. So that was also a big part of the initial phase of Sade Sati. 12th house is meditation. Best believe it. Okay, so I was very inward. I was very introspective. I was meditating 40 minutes a day. I remember I would be going from point A to point B in New York on like this metro, busy, chaotic metro, and I would sit on the metro and I'd be like, I need to meditate. I gotta do it. And so I would meditate. Didn't matter where it was. I was like in the hustle bustle of Brooklyn, New York City, and I would just meditate. I had to do it. So it was very 12th house like that. I remember I used to sit on like the grass. There was this grass at the school I went to, the art school I was at the time. And like I was probably supposed to be doing something else, right? Like probably meant to go do a group project, whatever. And I would just go sit on the grass and I would meditate for 40 minutes in front of everyone. And you know what? Let me say this. Nowadays, no one blinks an eye when you meditate, but back then, they're probably like, who is this girl meditating on the grass? You know what I mean? Who is this girl? I don't know, but honestly, it was iconic. So I would just sit on the grass at art school 40 minutes, close my eyes and meditate. I didn't care. I had to do it. It truly changed and saved my whole life during Sade Sati. It was like the biggest blessing I ever had at that time. Okay, so that's the first phase. 12th house is also spirituality. It's moksha. It's dastana, but it's also moksha. So it means it's a very spiritual house. I got very serious about spiritual studies at that time. I was like obsessed with studying metaphysics, and I would get these stacks of books about astrology and Buddhism. And I was actually, I remember being really obsessed with Buddhism at this time. I would just like read about it so much. I was reading a lot about non-attachment, which 12th house is detachment from material senses. Yes, it is. And I was just like reading, and I was studying, and I was meditating, and I was introspective. I also remember at the time I cut out substances, I cut out alcohol, I went vegan at that time, which I'm not vegan anymore because it did not work for me, but I was vegan for a good 5 years. And so the initial phase of Sade Sati, I became vegan, and Saturn is cutting things out like that. Okay, so first phase for me, very introspective, very 12th house, lots of meditation, didn't really like being around people's energy. People were honestly annoying me and draining me a lot at that time period. I was like, get out of here. It felt like that. I took a lot of my studies very seriously with like spirituality. It was very intense, and even though I know this might sound like, oh, that sounds fun, like, you were, studying Buddhism and meditating in the grass. It was really intense. It was really, really intense, and there was this whole purification process going on. Like, prior to Sade Sati, I was having fun, I was partying it up, I was indulging in all sorts of things. So it was really intense, and it was a very strange time period. I look back and I'm like so grateful it happened, but it was strange, and it was very psychologically intense for sure. Best believe it. Okay. So that's the first phase, very 12th house, very, very 12th house. And maybe the way I'm explaining this isn't emphasizing enough that before I got into meditation in this time period, it was just bad, like it was really bad, but meditation really saved me at that time. So I feel really lucky about that. Okay, now let's go into, I wrote a list. Okay, so themes I experienced was loss. Yes, I lost a lot of friends, mostly because I stopped partying and I stopped drinking at the time. So a lot of my friends prior to Sade Sati were like party friends, drinking friends, like that. I got lucky in the sense that like during Sade Sati, I met some of the most amazing people of my life, and now I have like such amazing friendships and connections. But the beginning of Sade Sati, I lost so many friendships because I just wasn't on the same wavelength. We were interested in very different things. Like that. Okay, so definitely loss, cutting things out, meditation, introspection, extreme interest in spirituality, going to psychics, mediums. Yes, I forgot about this. Okay, I was going to a lot of psychics at the time too. 12th house, again, it's that moksha, it's that spiritual house. If you guys want to hear something very eerie that gives me chills to this day, I have chills. Okay. At this time, I went to a psychic who is pretty big on YouTube. Her name is Stargirl the Practical Witch, if you guys know her. Ooh, I have chills. Okay, so when I started Sade Sati, I was very lost. I was very confused. I didn't know if I was supposed to be in art school. Am I supposed to be a photographer? I wanted to be an artist. It wasn't working out, etc., etc. And so I booked a reading with this psychic, and she was a tarot reader, okay? And so she reads my tarot cards, and she tells me, I literally, like, when I talk about this, I get full body chills. She tells me, she goes, one day you're actually meant to have your own spiritual business. And I was like, girl, what are you talking about? I was like, what are you talking about? I want to be a photographer. I want to write. I loved poetry. I was trying to do it, not that. And she told me that at that time in the first phase of Sade Sati. And guess what, guys? I opened up a spiritual business 5.5 years later. Isn't that crazy? Gives me chills. Okay, so I was going to a lot of psychics. I was trying to find answers. I went to therapy for a little bit at that time because there was some stuff that I was trying to unravel that I'm not going to bring up in this video because it's too much, but there was a lot. There was a lot going on in the psyche, best believe it. Okay, so then let's move on to the second phase. So the next phase is when Saturn is directly on the moon. So this is the time period in which you have to get serious. Like, you got to get serious at this time. So this is like the core of Sade Sati. So the first phase is the preparation phase, right? So my preparation phase was reading a lot of books on Buddhism, meditating, going really, really deep. Like, I went so deep so deep in that Saturn 12th from the moon time period that I mean, by the end of it, I was like, I know everything about myself. I went so deep into the psyche at that time period. And it was preparing me for the next phase. Okay, next phase. Okay, so at this point, I was originally living in New York. I had a whole different career path. I had a whole different everything. I was in art school, and then this next phase happens. I left art school, dropped out of art school. I started an Etsy business, okay? And during this phase is when I had to get really serious about my business, about my work, about what I was doing. Okay, so this is when Saturn is on the moon. It's like, it's a maturation of the moon, of the mental energy, okay? This is where things get complex because, again, for me, my moon is in the 8th house, which rules astrology and psychic, and my 8th ruler is in my 10th house of career. So I got serious around my astrological, spiritual business and career when Saturn went over my moon in the 8th house, ruling my 10th house. That's where it gets very specific. Not every person, obviously going through Sade Sati, is going to start a business in astrology. You know, that's not going to happen. It's very different for every chart. But because that's how my chart was unfolding, I got very serious around my work. I started a business. I had to learn a lot at that time period. Like, I didn't know anything about business. I remember I had a lot of things that would come up all the time. I would get letters in the mail from like the bureau of whatever the heck. I had no idea how to do a business, and I was just doing it. So I was learning a lot about business. I was learning a lot about money, right? The 8th house is other people's money, government money, etc. I was learning how to manage finances. I had no idea like how to open a business bank account. I was just learning so much, and I was getting very serious at that time period. And I was also like really immersed in my spiritual astrological business, right? Saturn over the 8th house rulers in the 10th house, like that. Okay. So that was a time period when I was getting very serious. I was learning a lot of things I didn't know how to do before that. So it was interesting. I definitely made a lot of missteps along the way, a lot of like weird things with taxes. I definitely learned not to open an LLC. I definitely went into business with someone I should not have gone into business with. 8th house is also joint resources. I had, a teacher at the time that was really not a great person. A lot of things were going on, okay? A lot was happening, and so I was learning all these lessons, right? So then Saturn's on the moon, you're in it, like you're in the thick of it, you're learning a lot. To me, the phase of Saturn on the moon was much better than the phase before because I was in it. I was doing my business. Even though I was definitely making a lot of missteps along the way, I was still doing my own thing, and I was learning how to, create a business that I loved. And so even though it was a lot of like mistakes and lessons and experiences of like, oh, oops, oh, I guess you got to do that in business, I guess you should sign some more contracts. Like that, I definitely learned so much during Saturn on my moon, and it really wasn't, again, because I was like doing exactly what my chart wanted me to do, it really wasn't that bad for me, but I definitely was learning a lot of lessons, and I had to get very serious in a way that I was not serious before Saturn on the moon, right? Like I had never started a business before Saturn's on my moon. I didn't know how to do so many things, right? So it was like that. Right. And also, money was a huge theme of that time period, putting away money, investing money, figuring out, how much I need to save for taxes, all of that sort of stuff when Saturn was on my moon. So again, it's different for everyone's chart. I think because I did all the preparation in the Saturn before the moon time period, I was kind of ready. I was like, let's go. I've kind of, healed some really, really really deep-rooted stuff in that initial phase when it was on the moon. It wasn't that bad for me, but it was still Saturn, right? There was still a lot of like karma, a lot of lessons. Again, I made many missteps. I definitely did business with someone I should not have done business with during that time, which I won't get into the details of. I was learning a lot. I was experiencing a lot of stuff. So it was like that. Okay. The third phase, Saturn is second from the moon, okay? So this is going to take on the energy of the second house, right? So now we are unraveling lessons around sense of security, money, finances, family life, like that. And I see the final phase as the integration phase of Sade Sati. So this is where we integrate all the lessons from the first part, the second part, and it's like the integration of it all, okay? So I just came out of this integration phase and I can speak on it, again, from personal experience. Usually it's a lot about money, it's a lot about finances, and it's also a lot about like family life and your values and what you value as well too, because the second house is the house of what we value. Okay. It's also our speech, it's the way we speak and the way that we show up in the world, okay? The final phase of Sade Sati was a big integration. It was a lot of learning to ask for my worth in business, learning to raise my prices. It was a lot of second house stuff. It was very money focused. It was more so related to that second house energy. And it was a big integration. So I was like, it was almost like I was looking back at all the things I had learned from Sade Sati and integrating it into this new version of myself, right? Like I feel before Sade Sati and now, it's an insane difference. It's like two different people. I mean, if you told me 7.5 years ago when I started Sade Sati that I was going to be a Vedic astrologer running my own business and working with clients all over the world, and that I was going to like not drink and I was going to be, you know, very much on this like, I don't know, it's wild. Like I would not have believed it, you know? So big changes, right? Big integration. So the final phase for me was a lot of integration, and it was also getting more serious around like money, finances. It did connect to family life because second house is family life, where I actually felt very like dutiful towards my family during that phase as well too, which I just got out of. I don't know, it was interesting. I felt like I just wanted to really like show up for my family in certain ways, where like anytime I would see them, I'd be like, I need to bring them this, like I want to give them this, like I want to be the best, you know, daughter I can be. Like I don't know, it was really interesting. It was very interesting. I did definitely feel very Saturnian towards my second house because, you know, for me, I'm very lucky in this lifetime that my family is cool. I'm really lucky about that. You know, I know it's really not usually that way, but my family, they are really cool people. And so when Saturn went second from the moon, I was like, anytime I saw them, I wanted to like show up in my best way and, you know, bring them matcha and bring them pastries and, you know, buy them stuff like that. Like I wanted to be that way. So that was Saturn second from the moon. I felt very like dutiful towards family in certain ways. And I also felt like, you know, Saturn second from the moon, I had to take my finances a lot more seriously. I had to really figure out what I needed to save for taxes and what I had to put away into different accounts and, you know, all that sort of stuff. So it was very like second house focused. Okay, it was also a lot about self-worth and value, right? Because that's also the second house. It's like our worth. And so it was all these things that I was watching sort of like slip under the radar almost, where it's like I thought that I was getting my value in certain ways, and then I was like, no, I'm not. You know, it's like I was charging a lot less for certain clients, and then I would have, and I was just like, I need to just like understand that the work I do takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of energy. I've spent so much of my life training to be good at what I do, and like I can ask for more money. So it was a lot of that. There was a lot of self-worth, a lot of money, a lot of family, a lot of responsibility was there, like that. Okay. So I see the final phase as the integration phase. It's when you start taking the things you've learned and applying it, right? Really showing up in the world in this new Saturnian sort of way, okay? So very focused on like finances, family life, value, self-worth, like that. So that was the final phase for me. And I will say the final phase for me has been pretty good for the most part. It was definitely still a lot of lessons, a lot of integration. Again, I saw a lot of these like little minute ways in which like things were slipping between the cracks, where I was like, why am I doing that though? Like, why am I still not asking for my worth in that? Or why am I still scared to charge more for this? Or why? A lot of these little things I started noticing that connected more so to like value, self-worth, like that. Okay. So that's was my Sade Sati experience. Of course, there's so much more that happened that I will not be putting into this video online, but this is kind of the general consensus of it. And the best way I could explain Sade Sati, and I have chills right now, is, oh my goodness, you know, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Like, Sade Sati was quite literally the best thing that ever happened to me. And again, like, I have Jupiter aspecting my ascendant and my ascendant ruler, so like I'm gonna look at the positive no matter what. So you might go to another Vedic astrologer who doesn't have a lot of Jupiter in their chart, and they might tell you it was the worst thing that ever happened to them. I don't know, it's different, right? We all have different perspectives and experiences, but to me, Sade Sati was god awful at so many points. Like, oh my goodness, like the visceral feeling I get when I can recall what that first phase of Sade Sati felt like. Awful, like really, really awful at certain points. So lost, so confused, you know, so like, what is my path? What is my purpose? Why can't I figure it out? Why can't I make money? You know, all that sort of stuff at the beginning of Sade Sati. A lot of karmic relationships, a lot of connections that were not serving me. So many things unraveled during the whole Sade Sati time period that was like god awful at certain points, but it was also the best thing that ever happened to me, you know, because I don't think I would have started my business, left art school, dropped out of art school, got really serious around what I want to do and how I want to show up in the world. Like, I don't think any of that would have happened if I didn't go through the Sade Sati experience so young. And I got really serious, you know, like I'm not, again, there's always this duality. Like, I'm a very Jupiterian sort of person. I love to have fun. I love to laugh. I love to have a good time. I always want to just be light and fun and happy. But I also became very serious around so many things during Sade Sati that, I wasn't so aware of or conscious of before. Like, the way I show up in the world became very important to me during Sade Sati and after Sade Sati, where it's like, okay, these are my morals, these are my values, this is what I want to be as a person. You know, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this. You know, it was very Saturnian in that way, where I was very serious about, like, how do I want to be remembered in this world? You know, which sounds dramatic in a lot of ways, but it was important to me because, you know, before that, a lot of my life was spent doing things that weren't great, you know, like just having fun and partying and all those things before Sade Sati. And it was really important for me to like give something back to the world and actually have a purpose in this lifetime. And that really got developed during Sade Sati. And, you know, it's not to say like, oh my God, you know, I've changed people's lives, you know, I'm not trying to say that, but I do think that doing the work I do, the amount of messages I get and people who, you know, get readings, and it just helps them get back on their path or do things they want to do, or, you know, publish that book that they want to publish but they were scared to do it, and then I tell them go do it and they do it. And it's just things like that where it's like, I think it's really important, and this is getting into like my Jupiterian philosophical musings, but I think it's really, really important to give something back to the world, right? Like, that's what we're here for. And I think Sade Sati really fine-tuned what I wanted to give back to the world and what my input was, essentially. Like, what do I want to be seen for, and what do I want to do, and how do I want to help people? And it's not so much about me, it's more so like there's more to be done in this lifetime, right? So that's really what Sade Sati was for me. It was a very like, it was more, I would say for me, it was very about purpose. It was very about how do you want to show up in the world? What do you really want your work to be? Because that's nice that you want to be a photographer, but like, is that really your purpose? And again, it was so specific to my chart because it was like my 8th ruler is in my 10th house, like that. It was very much about astrology, metaphysics connected to my 10th house of career. So like that. Yeah, and I'm just trying to think if there's anything else really important I want to say about Sade Sati. Okay, this is really important. When you're in Sade Sati, don't try to do the quick, easy path. You're gonna have to do the things that are more serious and slow, and they take a while, but that's what you need to do during Sade Sati. An example of this is pre-Sade Sati, I pretty much studied astrology like on my own all the time. I would read books. I was obsessed with it. but I never like invested in courses, right? So during Sade Sati, I was like, no, like if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right. And so I trained under two really amazing astrologers. It was so much mental energy. If you guys know anything about learning Vedic astrology, whew, my mind. It's a lot. It's a lot of study. It's a lot of mental activation. So I decided to like take these very serious courses and like really get serious around what I was doing and invest and really try to be the best I could. So it's like that. It's like during Sade Sati, you want to do the more difficult, maybe slow, but rewarding path, okay? Sade Sati is not a get-rich-quick scheme, okay? Like, it's a time period when you want to do the thing that it's like, oh, I know this is going to be the harder thing, but I'm going to do it, right? And Saturn will really reward that as well, too. All right, so overall, my feelings about Sade Sati is it's the best thing and it's the worst thing that's going to happen to you. When you're in it, you're going to have a lot of difficult experiences, a lot of emotional intensity. You're going to feel like you're really unraveling something very deep within you, right? But by the end of it, you look back and it's like, oh my goodness, thank God I went through that. And you really become such a more evolved, mature version of yourself. And again, like, it doesn't mean you become boring, right? Like, I have Jupiter aspect in my first house. I can't be that way. I'm never going to just be like, oh, this is Saturn. No, I love to have fun, and that's always going to be part of who I am. But it's more Saturn in the way that, like, I do what needs to be done. I try to always do the best I can in my work and my career and show up in the best ways. And I take my work very seriously. And that all got developed for me during Sade Sati. So yeah, so that was my experience, and again, best thing and worst thing that can happen. As long as you really learn the lessons, integrate, when you come out of it, you're gonna be such a better, more like stable, evolved version of yourself. So I really look back, and I will say as well too, I feel lucky that I went through Sade Sati, like the ages I went through Sade Sati, because I feel like if I didn't, I just don't know where I would be now. Like, I feel very lucky about the age time period that I went through that. It's going to be different for everyone's chart, so everyone's going to have that experience at a different point of life, but I do think it really matured me at like the right ages that I needed to get matured in so many ways. So I do feel lucky about that as well too. All right, so let me know if you guys are either in your Sade Sati time period, if you're about to start it, are you in the first phase, the second phase, the final phase, are you a Capricorn moon and you just got out of your Sade Sati, what was your experience? And you guys can always book a reading, the link in my bio as well too. I hope you guys enjoyed. This was a video that is very important to me as someone who just got out of 7.5 years of Sade Sati. It's a really important video, and I tried to do it in a way that was going to be uplifting and no doom and gloom. All right, we will talk soon, and I'm sending all the love. Bye, guys.